Hello and welcome to this week's Torah in 10. This is a last portion. Literally, this will be the last. I know last week I said that was going to be the last, but this one will be the last. But anyway, so this is the last portion that we pick up here in the book of Leviticus. It's going to be from chapters 26, starting in verse 3, ending in chapter 27, verse 34. By my regulations is the name of this portion. I'm not going to try to announce it in the Hebrew again because I butchered it pretty bad. But this is like the sending off part of the book of Leviticus. It's like the going away letter, the kind of summarizing and a good ending point. We'll see that here. So we're going to start in Leviticus 26. And it says here in Leviticus 26, verses 3 through 9, it says, "If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and perform them, then I will give you rain in its season. The land shall yield its produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall last till the time of vintage, and the vintage shall last till the time of sowing. You shall eat your bread to the full and dwell in your land safely. I will give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none will make you afraid. I will rid the land of evil beasts, and the sword will not go through your land. You will chase your enemies, and they shall fall by the sword before you. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 shall put 10,000 to flight. Your enemies shall fall by the sword before you, for I will look on you favorably and make you fruitful, multiply you, and confirm my covenant with you." So what a great start to this chapter here. It's a list of a bunch of blessings and promises that come to us as believers and being obedient by obeying his commandments. This is by obeying his instructions, by obeying his Torah. It produces blessings and provision and prosperity. And so, Leviticus 26, starting in verse 14, this is what happens if we don't. And so, and this is as we're concluding the book of Leviticus. God's just given these instructions. He's reiterating what he said before, and just kind of saying, look, these are the principles that you're going to get to choose to live by. Choose A or B, you get to choose, right? And so he says here, "But if you do not obey me and do not observe all these commandments, and if you despise my statutes, or if you soul abhors my judgment, so that you do not perform all my commandments, but break my covenant, then I will punish you 7 times for your sins." So we know what happened, right? They disobeyed, they whored themselves out, they broke covenant, and they were vomited out of the land. They were exiled among the nations, and up until 1947 and 48, just recently that they've been brought back to the land. Leviticus 26, verse 44 through 45 says this, "Yet for all of that, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, nor shall I abhor them to utterly destroy them and break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God, but for their sake I will remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought back out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Lord." Okay, right here what we just read is we saw what happened. He goes, he said, if this is what happens when you break my covenant. So we saw the results of that. They got rejected. They got disciplined. They were exiled among the nations, scattered, right? Vomited out of the land. But God's saying right here is, I'm always going to remember my covenant. If you return to me, I'll bring you back. I am not going to break my covenant. I will remember my covenant. It's not going away. Just because you break it, just because you forget it, doesn't mean that God has forgot it, right? This is a proof text right here for some of the New Testament believers that we have that are teaching this replacement theology that, hey, Israel's no more. Those covenants are done with. They're gone. God's turned his back on them. But that's not true. God right here says that he does remember. His covenants are perpetual and everlasting. Just because they failed on their end, they are permanent, and they build on top of each other. None of the previous covenants of the 6 that we've had, one more to come, we got one more covenant, the previous 6 have not been broken. And Yeshua, Jesus, he said the same thing. He was kind of given his farewell message in our Brit Hadashah portion here. Jesus at the Last Supper, the Passover meal, and he's kind of given his farewell message to his disciples, similar to the conclusion that we saw in the similar message in Leviticus. And we're going to read in John chapter 14, verses 13 through 15, and verse 21. So this is this is where Jesus is saying about the blessings for keeping his commandments. And he says this, and whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If asking anything in my name, I will do it. If you love me, keep my commandments. He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me. Right here, Yeshua is saying to his disciples, and the message that we're going to, receive as believers too, is that, look, if you love him, we're going to keep his commandments. If we want to ask for prosperity and the blessings and the provision and the abundance that comes from God as our provider, we are to obey him. We are to obey his instructions. And that's what Jesus is saying right here. He's reiterating the message that we just read here in Leviticus, and we'll also read it again in Deuteronomy. So I hope this has helped in a couple different ways. If you've liked this video, please share it, hit the like button, and subscribe for more videos that we'll try to put out. So hope the Lord blesses you and keeps you on this Sabbath. Shalom.